So
Okay.
hey, Dennis, thanks for agreeing to do this for Clean Apps. Appreciate having you on. Keeping tabs on everything that's happening is always top of mind for us. So looking forward to hearing what's new that we all need to hear.
Actually, thank you, Bogdan. I actually really appreciate being able to do this as well. We have a way of reaching to our customers and talking to the AVs, but this is our channel for reaching out beyond that customer base. So we really, really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to talk about this. And in fact, well, you'll see, we're waiting on doing this talk before we started enforcing. We thought it was that important to make sure we could reach a broader audience. So thank you. I'm glad that we're here. I'm glad this day has finally come. We can do it. So that's good. So just so you know, I'm going to talk about this new ACR 008. I think probably a bunch of you guys have already heard about it and what we're going to do. But I wanted to go back and give a little bit of history into why we think we reached this point, and also what the actual policies are, and our strategies for complying with both this policy and how we understand what Microsoft's policies are. And then I have a little at the end about talking a little bit about the future, about what we think might still be coming up in the future that will just early warning to keep an eye on. So I'll dig into the free scan. So really,
Hey,
we're
hey,
talking.
wait,
Yeah,
Dennis, I'm
I'm
sorry to
sorry.
interrupt. Could you just back up a little bit? Since we're recording this, we probably want to show this, post event. Maybe why don't you start by, I know for most of the audience here, we all know what a system utility app is, but why don't you frame that first? What is
Yeah.
that?
Okay, that's a fair point. So I think the best way we describe system utilities are enhancements sold by third parties to operating systems, right? In order to make the operating system perform better or different than what it was intended to by the OS maker.
Or
So
to fix something that the customer feels they have.
examples of this are, Windows does a great job updating their own drivers, but a crappy job updating third-party drivers. So that's a bunch of driver updaters as system utilities out there. There was a point where Windows struggled with keeping its registry clean. So once upon a time, there were a whole bunch of registry cleaners, and they once had a struggle with uninstalling apps, and so there were a bunch of app uninstallers out there. So different times, depending on the capabilities of an operating system, you have these different utilities that are, think about like it's an aftermarket add-on for your car. This is an aftermarket add-on for your computer, right? To get things done. Maybe it makes something easier, maybe it makes something different, but that's kind of how we think about a system utility. It's helping the OS in ways that the OS either wasn't designed for, or they didn't. It implements a feature that they didn't have in it. So we consider antivirus applications system utilities that are trying to help the OS do a better job protecting itself, right? As an example, right? System optimizers for sure. Password cleaners, or password, not cleaner, sorry. I guess I would say tracking cleaners are system utilities. Anything that's trying to help improve your operating system or some major component of your operating system. Yeah,
That's helpful. Thank you.
that help? Okay, cool. And so because it's dealing at the system level in an area that requires some level of expertise, there are requirements that both Microsoft and antivirus companies put on system utilities. I think because it requires that expertise, it lends itself to a bad actor claiming all kinds of things about your system to make money off a customer. And because of that, and because those bad actors actually impact the good players out there, that's why you have all these detections that take place. And that's why it's important for us to regulate this space, is to make sure that those bad actors don't gain too much traction and cause a lot of damage for everybody else. And I think it's fair to say that system utilities make up the bulk of our business of what we do at AppEsteem, both on our customers who we do certification for, as well as our deceptors, the ones we call out. as doing bad behavior. It's the meat and potatoes of this performance marketing business, where once upon a time I think it was search. Maybe you go back 6 or 7 years. Now it's definitely system utilities.
So can an extension fall into the system utility category, like a browser extension or browser add-on?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a browser utility at that point. It's not really a system utility. It's adding features to the browser. So no, unless your browser is your system, which maybe you could claim on Chrome OS, but not really enough. But
okay, so basically it's a desktop app for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's almost always a desktop app, and you know, we're seeing more and more in Windows these days. I'm sorry, more and more in Mac these days. It used to just be pretty much a Windows space. And I think the other thing to note is that system utilities change with time, and this is a pretty important concept. I mean, it used to be, like I talked about registry cleaners. You don't really see registry cleaners out there. It's not really in the public mindset. They used to be disk defrag tools like crazy out there that aren't so important anymore because that comes built into the system. So utilities kind of are the bleeding edge of an operating system, and you know, and sometimes when the glacier catches up and rolls over the land, a good system utility provider dances ahead of that glacier and produces new things and new ways of adding utility or adding value to the operating system.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Kind of a way to think about it, right? It's a those building system utilities, they're on a treadmill. Right? As the OS adds more and more capabilities, system utility has to keep moving ahead. At least that's what we've noticed. And yeah, those are the ones that thrive, at least.
All right, thank you for framing that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have started there. I made a silly assumption. All right, I already went over the agenda. That doesn't change based on that description, so I'm going to go to the next slide. So free scans and what the AVs did about them. This is kind of a look into the last 9 years. There was a point AVs started detecting fake system utilities that actually didn't do what they said, and so they started pretty blatantly. Like a good way to think about this problem are all those fake AVs that came out like between 2008 and 2012. There's a whole bunch of them that popped up that said, hey, your computer's infected, with a pop-up, download my stuff. You download their stuff, it doesn't fix anything, it just asks you for money. Or maybe it froze your machine while it asked you for money, whatever it might have done there. So those got a label of fake AV, and then there were fake all kinds of system utilities that came out. And they just called those as malware, or not even unwanted software. They got called as malware. And then by 2014, and a lot of this was due to the work of what Microsoft was working on at the time and where CSA was going at the time, AVs reached a point that they got pretty consistent warning about system utilities making exaggerated claims. And they put those in a category called PUA, and they usually didn't detect them. They usually just warned people about them, that this was happening so that customer could decide that they just wanted to uninstall it. Starting in 2016, AppEsteem, we came along and we tried to codify those warnings, working with the AVs to get more serious about them, and we defined ACR 003, and where we looked at system utilities that were upselling, you know, those that weren't totally free, and using words like problem or error or ancient, right, things like that, and strong colors like red, and they're using those to drive conversions. And we said that, no, I think every AV is now agreeing that's bad, and that got moved out of PUA and into unwanted software. And in 2018, some of you guys might remember, we launched ACR 004, where the AVs were beginning to detect system utilities that were doing free scans, but they were charging to fix. I think in all of these cases, all the way back to 2012, all these cases, the one common thread taking place was the model, the sales approach has been consistent, which is download the software, it does a free scan, and then tries to upsell you. In all cases, right? So everything is tied to a free scan. And some people put a fake free scan into the browser and try to convince the user they were actually running a free scan, and others actually ran the free scan. But it all starts with running a free scan and then getting paid to fix it. And that's been what AVs have been battling with, and Microsoft and Apple as well have been battling with, is how do you do that in a way that's fair to the consumer? And those rules change over time, as you see on this slide. Questions about this before I move on? I don't have the panel up for questions, so if maybe you guys could keep an eye if someone types.
Oh yeah, I'll keep it open.
Yeah, okay, cool, thank you. And I'm gonna go to the next slide then, but feel free to ask questions, interrupt me, or feel free to type them and we'll get to that.
Yeah, so guys, the reason we do this format instead of a broadcast on YouTube is we want to provide all of the members of the community the opportunity to ask questions, provide feedback, what perspectives, etc. So that this is why we do it this way. Otherwise, we could just do broadcasts. But please take advantage whenever you feel.
Okay, so with all these changes that have taken place over the last 9 years, why do the AVs feel they need to do more today? And I think that's what I'm trying to answer here with why AVs have updated their policy again. Well, there's two reasons, and one is I'm going to show you some screenshots, and the other reason is the sleeping giant Microsoft has gotten a little stricter, or quite a bit stricter about what they're doing. And so trying to get everybody back in sync again is why we've labeled it ACR 008. So we'll start with this. So about the free scans, remember I said this was a connective tissue about the problems there. So the issue is you do the free scan, and the question is, can you actually fix from those free scans or not? And the requirement has been there now for 3 years that if you do a free scan for something temporary, you have to fix it for free. But sometimes it's hard for the consumers to actually find that free option, right? That's sometimes it's hard to find. Sometimes they're buried only in a purchase flow later, and it's only available once you opt out of buy-in. It gets confusing out there, and the AVs were getting too many support issues about missing detections. Meaning, people would call up their support and saying, what's wrong with you? You're a crappy AV. You're not detecting this app. It's obviously bad. Why don't you realize it? Or why don't you do it? The reason they weren't is this behavior was happening from two groups of customers. One were certified apps, and two was the AVs themselves were doing this behavior. And so they didn't really want to detect these apps because a lot of them were certified and a lot of them were AVs, and nobody really wants to detect either of that category. Right. So they needed a way to change their behavior and get everybody to kind of go along together with it. So I just going to step through a couple examples of this. This was a piece of software that this is last April, on the left-hand side, it would run a free scan. Do I have a pointer? I think I do. Does that work?
I don't know how that works.
Laser pointer. Ha!
Oh, look at you.
See my point?
Yep.
Look at that. So it would run the free scan, right? And it would say, oh, we found these issues, blah, blah, blah. These things have issues. These things can be fixed. This is the space you can save. Start repair. So you click the start repair button, and it gave you a prompt for a license key. There's no sign of any free fix whatever here, right? Which taken place there. It also launched this shopping cart page at the same time, and buried in here, there's a free manual repair. And so the AVs would say, hey, the software itself didn't say it was bad, and it was really tough for customers to see this. And so, yes, it meets ACR 004 requirements that you have to give a free fix, but it's A, it's not in the software, B, it's really tough for the customer to see, and they kind of really have to opt out before they get there. So this was one example. The next example of obscuring free fixes is, here's the case of the free scan results coming in. The customer hits activate and repair. They get this screen, activate and repair, right? They have to then click activate now, right? And they get this web page here. And once they get that web page here, and they click activate now, again, then you get to the cart where you get a chance to get your free fixes. So the frustrating part here for a consumer is that they essentially have to go through a purchase just to get to that free fix option. So this was considered behavior that really wasn't meeting the spirit of you have to offer a free fix to your customer, because you don't even know you have a free fix until you get all the way through the purchase flow. It wasn't just the system utilities in the typical system utilities. The AVs themselves had this behavior, and the AVs were complaining about each other doing this behavior. And this is a flow of that, where they would show the issues found. The AV had its own system utility, their own system optimization built in. They got the free scan results. You click the Resolve All button. You get the Buy Now button. And only if you happen to click the X up here, do you get the option for not ready to pay, try it free. So you had to decline the Buy Now to get your free option. Again, too late in the process. And another example of another AV doing the same thing. Until you click this X button here, right, then you can go and try for free. So the AVs themselves were questioning, hey, how do we stop this behavior from picking up? How do we, if we do it, or if we let the AVs do it, we have to let all apps do it. And at the same time, Microsoft was saying, you know what, anybody who makes it difficult to find that button, we're going to detect. And we were getting into conflicts with them because they were wanting to detect certified apps and asking us, you know, when are you going to update your policy on this? Because we're going to detect them. So we organized, I guess, look at the next slide. I'm speaking it all, but it's on this next slide here. We organized a way to hash out this new requirement, ACR 008, and worked with the AVs and with Microsoft to buy enough time to get everybody to make the changes and to get compliant. And so we had scheduled this to go live on November 1st. We've now delayed that till December 1st because we wanted to make sure we did more industry outreach. This is one of those calls for industry outreach to get it done. So I haven't said what the ACR 008 is, but essentially we're trying to address those problems where the consumer doesn't really know or has a difficult time finding that free fix option they have after the free scan. So I think this might be a good time to pause and wait for someone to ask something, because I got to think there's got to be at least some questions out there.
We're smarter. We might be smarter than you think.
This is just all old news for everybody, right?
I mean,
Maybe.
you make it clear. You make it clear too.
Oh, you're so nice, Lou. Thank you. All right. So on my next slide, for those of you who don't want to read it, I put a little, too long didn't read comment here. Essentially, ACR 008 summarizes to say, if a system utility is required to give free fixes, those free fixes must be accessible and easy. All right. So you can't bury them or hide them or put them in a place that even the AVs can't find them as they look at your software, right? Or your customer can't find them. You have to make them accessible and easy. And that's really just a summary. If you're required to provide free fixes after your free scan, you got to make sure that you didn't tuck them away someplace that was impossible. So think of it similar to the updates that went in place at some point for call centers and the call to activate stuff, where eventually, after a while, that call to activate, there was a equal real estate rule that went in place, which said you had to give equal real estate to the doing it online as you did to the call to activate.
So accessible is just another word for prominent.
It can't. Yeah, it has to be. It can't be. It has to be where they can see it. It's more than just prominent. I think prominent is more of an easy statement.
Okay.
Accessible is more, like in the examples where the AVs were burying it behind the close button. That's not accessible.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
That's an example of inaccessibility. Easy could be, you have to fix one item at a time of 1,000 registry entries. Right. Would be an example of not being easy. So I'm just going to read through it. Even I did the TLDR, but essentially, if an app must provide free fixes to free scan results, the details regarding the free fix must be obvious, mentioned within the app itself, not just in the shopping cart, not solely part of a purchase flow, available simultaneously with a purchase flow, and no more difficult to obtain than the fully functional version. So that's our way of trying to summarize all the little things we've seen in the last 3 years of people who've had to give a free fix. And these are ways that we're trying to make sure they're not using to give that free fix where the consumer doesn't really know they have a free fix. Essentially, if you have to give a free fix, the consumer has to really have that option to do the free fix. And your job is not just to hide it. Your job is to actually make sure that it's available to the consumer. Right? The intent. You can find it as easy as they can find the purchase option. Think of it that way. That I'm pausing here again because this ACR is going to cause a lot of new deceptors to pop up. And I don't know if any of you guys own any of those apps that might end up on a deceptor list. And I don't want that to happen to anybody who's on this call. You're on this call because you're a member of CleanApps. And that means you're going to keep your apps clean, I hope. And if you fail on this, I hate the idea of having to put you on a deceptor list, especially CleanApps members.
Right. So like the AppEsteem customers have been aware of this for a while, right? This is more for those who are not necessarily availing themselves of the AppEsteem service, right? They may not be aware of all of this at this point.
Yep. And you don't have to join or become an AppEsteem customer to follow this. This is just something you just got to do.
All right. I'm getting somebody else's speaker home. Will that work? Yeah, that worked.
Whatever you did. So nice. Okay. Wow. I'm just so amazed. I feel like fabulous. I must be doing such a nice job explaining it. All right. So I mean, it sounds obvious, but why isn't it certain obvious? Okay. So even though we have ACR 008, got to point out that we have noticed there's additional things Microsoft cares about. And because they have such a large share of AV, and some of you guys use Microsoft for advertising, and their policies affect that as well, that it's good to keep both of those policies in mind.
So wait, so back up for a second, Dennis. So you're saying that it's not just an AV policy, it's a Bing ads policy?
Yeah, there are, well, they have additional policies that go beyond ACR 008, which are Bing related. And some of you guys have been dealing with that for a few years now, where those policies go beyond. But I want to mention them because it affects, your whole free scan approach. That we have a policy that the AVs have agreed to, and then there's an additional policy that Microsoft has, both for their AV and for what they do with Microsoft advertising. So I wanted to at least review those, what we've seen with Microsoft as well.
Okay, so this is separate and distinct from everything so far.
Yeah, we've tried to cover this with ACR 008, but we can only go as far as the AVs are willing to detect for, and the majority of the AVs don't go as far as Microsoft and don't want to go as far as Microsoft.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I want to call out what Microsoft cares about because it could affect you guys. So first of all, they say, when we write to them and we talk to them, they come back and they say, we detect apps that do this: display device health claims in alarming manners and require payment or certain actions in exchange for the purported issues. So a free scan is an example of displaying device health claims in alarming manners. Other ways are making those claims without a scan. Right? You can't do that either. But what we find that's different from what we have for alarming things in ACR 004 and 003 is essentially, we feel Microsoft believes that anytime you say the OS isn't enough and that you need a system utility to do something that the OS doesn't do, that's alarming. It's alarming, at least for Microsoft, right? Because it's a feature that their OS doesn't provide, and they are they're very conservative when it comes to thinking about what's alarming or what isn't alarming. They're conservative, and they're want to call more things alarming than not. So if we pass something in ACR 004 that it's not using red, it's not saying problems or errors, it doesn't have a gauge, Microsoft might still feel that the way it's worded is still alarming to them or alarming to a consumer. And so if you make those claims, maybe let's say you have a driver updater and you still require payment or certain actions to fix those things, they're still going to detect you. And then the second point where they're different is that we allow you to make stronger claims as long as you give a full function trial that lasts at least for a day, or if you want to collect payment details, at least for 7 days. Microsoft doesn't believe in this policy. They think that even if you give a fully functional free trial for 7 days, you cannot pre-collect payment details. And they are different than the rest of the industry. The rest of the AVs out there are very happy with a 7-day free trial period to collect payment details. We've talked to them. We've asked them, do they want to change to match Microsoft? They're not interested, and they're still hoping Microsoft will change their own policy. And we're working with Microsoft to see if we can convince them that we have enough protections in place that they can relax this one. But right now, Microsoft is still holding firm on this. So
Wow.
we would suggest that you don't, if you want to not be put into some weird bucket by Microsoft, right, as maybe getting detected, maybe listed as PUA, maybe even listed as unwanted software, is that you do not pre-collect payment details. Even though we allow that with ACR 004 and 008, right, but something to think about not doing.
And this is specific to system utilities.
This is specific to not just system utilities. It's specific to system utilities that do free scans.
Ah, okay.
So if you don't do a free scan, you don't have to worry about this. Because unless you're making device health claims without a scan, in which case you're going to be a deceptor anyway, because how you claiming something you don't know.
Yeah.
So if you make that claim, we assume it's a free scan. So that's one, is that this payment utility thing gets in the way. And we've had, you guys who have certified apps, you've seen this problem, right? I mean, quite a few of you guys have seen this problem, that if you try and collect payment details, even though you gave a free version of your software, you still might get listed as PUA by Microsoft.
So what I'm hearing, Dennis, is you're hoping that they might change their minds, but so far that for however long this has been going on, they haven't budged.
So there's a group who owns the policies, and then there's a group who implements the policies. The group who owns the policies is willing to change, it seems. And the group who implements the policies is unwilling to change. So until they both get aligned, the policy is not going to change.
Gotcha.
And with in the past, like if this was 2 years ago, I would hop on a plane, fly to Australia, meet with the team. We'd hash it out. We'd come up with an agreement that everybody can live with, and we would just do it. And these days of COVID, it's impossible, right? This is not something that just can't happen over the phone. Something that has to happen formally, and everything is much slower. And I'm sorry, I really was hoping to get this thing resolved, right, by November. Right?
Yeah,
So
that's what I was hoping.
Yeah, it's very tough these days. And so my hand goes way up when you say those who want to travel again. It's tough running a business where sometimes it requires that in-person touch, right, in order to get those changes made. So yeah, I'm just giving you a little bit of the insider side of what happens at AppEsteem. Yeah. So that's one thing about the payment details. So something to keep in mind. And the second thing to keep in mind is if you're advertising with Microsoft Advertising, you can't advertise with them unless you give free fixes for every system utility that scans for free. So even if you're not bound by 004 because you're offering permanent fixes and not temporary fixes, such as driver updaters or maybe duplicate file deletions, something like that, right? It doesn't matter if you don't offer free fixes in your tool, you can't buy Microsoft advertising for it. So that's a case where where that team who wrote the policy couldn't make a change to their AV, but they found another way to enforce it through the advertising program.
What about data recovery? Because that would fall into the same thing. We normally do a scan there, show what files can be recovered, but
yeah.
Obviously we don't know if you recover the file for them, no one ever buys it. Is that in the
Right.
same boat here?
Yes, yes, Phil, that's the exact same boat. If you did that scan, I mean, honestly, I think the answer, if you want to live within the Microsoft realm, is you sell the tool and you give them their money back if it didn't work, and you don't do the free scan.
Wow. Okay.
Right? I really think if you want to play in the Microsoft advertising space, you want to advertise it on Bing or live in their display network.
Fascinating.
You might get away with it inside, the app itself, and the AV is not detecting it, but you're not going to be able to buy advertising. But that's okay. I mean, that's just one way they have enforcing, and they certainly don't hold a monopoly over, search ads and display ads. As we're all familiar, there's a much bigger company out there with that monopoly. But if you've built your business around the Bing approach, then something to keep in mind.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay, I'm going to my next slide, recommended strategies for compliance. So I broke this into what not to do, what to do, and maybe some other thoughts and ways to avoid the problem altogether. So what not to do? Well, I color-coded these. For sure, don't do this first bullet. Don't hide your free fixes. All right, don't make the offer for free fixes tinier than the offer to pay. Don't offer them only in your cart. You got to put it into your app itself. Don't wait until the consumer declines paying. Don't wait until the purchase flow happens to offer the free fix. You got to do it before all that. So that's the big requirement. Then we have, if you do any of those things here, you'll fail ACR 008 and you'll get added to a deceptor list. If you're a certified app, you'll get a chance to fix it, right? Because you've committed to fixing it. But eventually, if you still don't fix it, you'll get added to a deceptor list. And that's not a good place to be. These next two I have here are suggestions, right? A way to think about it as an intent. And one is, think about it this way, is don't make your free fix more difficult than the paid version would be. So if you offer free fixes in your app, let's say that you have a system optimizer and you have 10 things for them to optimize, and your paid version just goes ahead and does them with one click, your free fixes should just go ahead and do it with one click. It shouldn't be 10 clicks to fix the 10 things. Think of it that way. And if you don't think of it that way, then the AVs start thinking about, did you actually offer those free fixes? Or did you keep it tedious and therefore you failed 008? So it's a good way to think about your problem is that imagine your free fix is like a free trial, right? It might just be a one-time use free trial, but it should be just as easy as if they had bought the app. Second thing is, don't make obtaining the free fix harder than your free scan. So if it was very simple for them to download your app and run a free scan, make it that easy for them to get their free fix. If you have a one-click scan, have a one-click free fix. It shouldn't be a multi-click free fix for that very, very simple scan. So that's just two ways for you to think about your design and your user interface as you do this in order to comply with ACR 008. And the third bullet, or the fourth bullet, sorry, that I listed here, I put in blue just to remind me of the Microsoft blue there. Don't require credit cards to obtain the free fix. It's not a requirement for ACR 008, but you risk being detected or at least stopped from advertising by Microsoft. For sure, you'll be listed as PUA, right? Which isn't good as they're turning more and more PUA on throughout their throughout Microsoft ecosystem. The consumers are getting it too. So it's better not to require that credit card to get your free fix. I'm pausing again.
So I want to voice just a scenario. So if there's no scan, you could still require, but so assuming a scenario where there's no free scan for a system utility, but you want to offer a free trial up front, you could collect a credit card in that scenario in front of the free trial.
Right. Even the Microsoft policy states if you display device health claims in alarming manners and require payment to get them fixed. So
Right.
if you're just collecting their payment details with a free thing and you never did a scan their box, 004 and 008, they don't apply to you.
Okay, so I could just promote a free trial of, you know, let's say a driver updater, and simply say, okay, you want to get that free trial going. No results, no scans, right? Maybe there's a download first, right? Maybe the launch says, okay, start your free trial, put your credit card in right there.
Yeah, in that case, Bogdan, I compare you to what Netflix does or what Microsoft Office does.
Right.
Which is, hey, give me your credit card details and you can use our product for a month for free.
Right.
And we'll only
And there's
charge
no time limits, 1 day, 7 days.
Right. Then you just have to follow the rules for negative options, which is
Sure.
they have to opt out to cancel that charge.
But wait, so what's that rule?
So we have ACRs for when you collect a credit card and then you say, if you don't cancel, we're going to charge you in 7 days or in 30 days or whatever.
Right.
There's all kinds of, I guess there's 2 or 3 ACRs around that situation to make sure that you provide the details to them. You've given them a $0 charge against their credit card immediately. They have a way they can cancel online. They get reminded before that the payment gets charged to their credit card that it's coming. Yeah, so there's ACRs.
And some of that's industry too, like MasterCard and Visa have that requirement, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So the standards for how you do that so you don't fall into unwanted categories.
Okay, gotcha.
But you'll still have to follow those, but ACR 004 and ACR 008 don't apply to you if you don't offer a free scan. They're
Okay.
only tied to free scans.
Okay, I'll ask my conspiracy question later.
What are you waiting for?
Well, so your initial chart, right, of the history, like every 2 years there's more pressure on system utilities, and so this is great for the next couple of years the way I see it, right? But I keep wondering, is there just like, are we slowly getting to the day where just system utilities are just completely persona non grata as a category?
Well, I think we're slowly getting to the point where free scans are persona non grata.
Right.
Yeah,
Certainly.
I think that's what's happening. If I were to think about, the future, but I have my final slide, which is only 3 slides away. It's a good place to talk about that one. But yes, I do think, Bogdan, you're onto something there.
Yeah.
Okay, what you should do. Advertise your free fixes as soon as you show results. I think that's a good way to think about it. Like if you show that the system has issues, you should also be showing, here's the way you can fix those right away. Don't wait to show those. Don't bury it until they say, let me go buy the solution or purchase or activate. Just tell them they get a free fix. Be very clear that it's free. Make it very simple for them, right? So that's number 1. Right, that's kind of the way we're expecting you to do this, right, to meet ACR 008. 2 is they have to be simple to obtain. So I think the important thing here is you only collect necessary information. So for instance, let's say that the only way they can get their activation key is in the mail, whether it's right away or whether it's in a delay, that's up to you. right? And then that's the only time that you can require an email. But if you happen to show the activation key on the screen, you can't require the email, right? You could say, hey, give me your email and I will send you a copy of this, but you can only require information that is required for you to deliver that free fix. So you can interpret that two different ways. For instance, some of you might say, oh, then I'm only going to give my key out, after I collect the email. And that's fine. Just make sure that that's the only way they can get that activation key. And you didn't give them some other way. Because if you did, then that wouldn't be, then you collected information you shouldn't have. I hope that made sense. I used a lot of words to explain what I put very simply here. And lastly, what you should do is make that free fix easy to run. It shouldn't be more difficult. And we've seen quite a few apps who make a claim to us that, oh, we give a free fix. We pop up the Explorer box. And we say, these are the files you should have deleted. So at the end of the free fix, we open up the Explorer box and we tell you, have at it. Go ahead and delete those files. And that is not a free fix that's easy to run. That's telling the customer, go do it yourself, right? Which is not what your paid version does. So that doesn't count. So and that wasn't easy to run. And another way, I think this point here is good too. Several products offer fix by category, but they didn't offer scan by category. They scanned everything. So if you're going to scan everything, you should have a fix everything option. If you scan one category at a time, that's fine that you fix one category at a time. But make it match. And you guys are just, either you're just soaking it all in, or you're rolling your eyes because you're like, Dennis, why are you talking about this? Right? Because we all know this. This is just obvious.
But Dennis, what you just said about the categories, isn't this something that we've already had to do earlier? So
we have been. So Aviv, that's a great question. We have been talking to you guys about this for the last few months. And
no. I'm referring to the fact that for a long time now, we couldn't have scanned, for example, 5 categories, show the results, fix only one. If we scanned it and showed the results, we had to let them fix it for free. That's already happening.
So Aviv, the pressure we put on was, think about in the last 3 years, we started with, there were a lot of apps for the first year who were doing the scans, and then you had to fix one at a time. Mm-hmm. And so we moved people to saying, you got to fix at least the category.
I see. All right.
And not just a single at a time. And now this step is, if you show all those categories, you should fix all those categories at once.
Only if you scan them.
Yeah.
Only
if you don't scan it, fine. Yeah. If you don't give them, if you're requiring, if you have a one-click free scan, you need a one-click free fix. If you have a multi-click free scan where you got to scan each category individually, then you can have the same multi-click free fixes for one per category.
But it's okay to show a category that's grayed out and saying, hey, this category is not included in first of all, we're not scanning for free. It's not part of the free, but it's there if you buy.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
That's a good thing to do. In fact,
yeah.
You might want to consider doing it with your entire product, and that's what I have on the next slide, right? So alternative approaches. Number one is bypass your 004 and 008 requirements altogether. Don't use free scans to convert. Talk about what you offer. Talk about your system inventory. Show them your reviews. Talk about
we've been doing this for 3 years, guys. It works.
It works. Right. Talk about how awesome you are, and then get people to pay you up front. It's a good thing. So that's one way I recommend this way over everything else, because as long as you're doing free scans, you're going to have these kinds of issues. Right? Show them your value, and you can show them the value. You can bypass this requirement by giving them a free trial right up front, right? As a way to do it, or you can get them to pay right up front. Either way, right? 2 is collect your payment info before you do a free scan. Like Bogdan, this was your example you gave. You were asking about if you collect a credit card up front before they do the free scan, is that fine? The answer is yes. You didn't tie fixing to the payment. You tied scanning to the payment.
Yeah.
which is fine. And the last one is sell before scanning. You know, sell before scanning, use the negative option, which was collect the payment stuff up front, tell them you're going to charge them all the ACRs, right, for that. And that's another way you can do it. So you don't have to follow. That's why I call this the alternative slide. You don't have to meet ACR 004 and 8 requirements. You can just avoid ACR 004 and 008 altogether. But that takes confidence in the value of your product, right? And so, which is something which anyone who's ever talked to me in the last few years has heard me talk about, is that you got to make sure you're selling value to your customer, right? So hopefully, yeah, I think everyone on this call is selling value, so that shouldn't be as difficult. But I do get it. This is not an easy path to go down, especially if you've tuned all your systems to converting based on a scan result.
It's work.
Yeah,
It's a lot of work.
But I believe it puts you in a very good place. So it's worth considering, and we're very happy to work with you as you do that and to make sure you get it right. Any of these options, we're very, very happy to help assist you in doing that. Just let us know. We would love to. Okay, my final slide is where I think it's going to go someday. And I get it that I'm also one of the players out there who helps lead things in these directions. So you're seeing a little bit of the way I think the industry is leaning and a little bit of my own thoughts on this. So I think when you're thinking more long-term about your future as you're keep making sure your app thrives over the next few years, I think assume that someday these ACR 004 and 8 requirements are going to apply to everything, not just those providing permanent fixes. So if you have a driver updater, you have a, you know, one of these tools that is considered a permanent fix. Driver updater is just the best example out there that we have there, right, of a permanent fix out there. Let's assume that these rules are going to apply to you at some point in the future, and that you don't have an exemption from fixing your free scans. You have to provide your fixes. If you have a password recovery system or a file recovery system, you're going to have to follow 004 and 008 because it still has a free scan. So think about that. So that's one thing. That's probably the shortest term future. Longer term, I think it's fair to think that your free scans are only going to be allowed as part of a free trial. And it won't be an individual component that you can get outside of a free trial. So the idea of, hey, let me go scan your place before you think about buying will go away for system utilities. And I think in my heart, I believe both of these things are going to happen in the next few years. And I don't think it's a bad world if these two things happen. It's just you guys should prepare for it and build your apps in a way that you survive well in this kind of world. Because, you know, those guys are going to succeed. If you have an app that the only way that it can convert is because you've scared your user to get it there, that's not a good place for you to be. You got to offer enough value that you'll survive in a world where imagine these two things were true.
Yeah.
This is, I don't know whether it's a Thursday 10 o'clock call that's causing the silence, but I don't think I've ever been on a call where it's been this quiet, guys.
No, you think it's silent every time. You're going, where are you guys?
Yeah,
Do I
seriously.
really? Okay, I
We're
take it
here.
back. I
We're
should
here.
listen. I should listen to
very
my old recordings.
I think everybody's battle worn with the last 6 years of this, and we've been beaten into submission.
Yeah. And it's also pretty clear cut. You know, it's not complicated.
Yeah.
No, I mean the difficulty lies in how do you keep your business going, right? It's not about what's the right thing to do. It's is this product viable if I make this change? And I know from our certified customers' perspective, yes, their products are viable, right? They have enough value. We've been working with them on the value side as well as on how to do this in a in a way that's, you know, fair for the consumers long enough that we know, and you know, you can make money and you're viable doing these changes.
No, there's plenty of certified apps, and I'll put our up that have proven that you can make this work no matter what. It's just work. It's painful work. No question that you can make it work.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I hope you continue making it work, and I hope your apps continue to thrive. Our livelihood depends on meeting the balance of your thriving apps versus the appetite of the AVs and the operating systems, right? To put you out of business, right? So we don't want that, right? We want you guys to be able to thrive, but to do that, we want you to deliver value and not trick your way to get there. So I think as long as everyone's doing their part, we're all going to succeed, and I think that's a good thing. I have to say, in the last year or two, you know, we've been trying to release our own set of apps, or our own app out there, our own browser extension, and now we're offering a search. And we've learned an awful lot about, you know, the difficulties you guys go through on getting the conversion right, getting your distribution deals cut properly, you know, buying your advertising, and trying to fight up against the Borg of Google not answering your questions. And so we've learned an awful lot, and we have a lot more sympathy, I think, and empathy on what you guys go through. And I'm hoping that makes us better certifiers for your stuff, as well as we understand more what you have to go through. It surely makes us better in explaining your problems to the AVs, right? As we're able to talk to them with much more understanding as we go through it ourselves. So I hope that makes us more valuable for you.
It totally is. Dennis, thanks a lot. This was actually the way that this was described today is just so clear cut. It's pretty clear what has to be done.
Awesome.
I appreciate your time.
And
Yeah.
although I would love to have a whole bunch of disruptors on the list, it shouldn't be anybody on this call. Right? Please,
Yeah, right.
please get your apps fixed. Please, please, please. All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you. Thank you again,
Thank you.
Lou and Bogan, for the time. Really appreciate it.
Sure,
I
thank you,
appreciate
Dennis.
Thank you,
It was
Dennis.
really done, well done.
Yeah. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for
Thanks all
participating.
you guys for coming.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Is there any other questions?
Anybody? Whoever's still on, if you want to chat, we'll stay on.
The question sounded like. But then they left. All right, guys.
Well, not
All right, guys. Thanks
Take
again.
care.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Till next time.
Until next time.